So last week we built uh, this application where we are displaying the list of fruits, and based on the list of fruits, we had an input box, and we in this input box we were providing the value, which is essentially a search term, and based on this search term we were filtering the list of fruits. So if I said apple, app, we saw the apple and pineapple, so on and so forth. Uh, Now we have to cover a couple of important concepts today, and the easiest of them is React Fragments. And React Fragments are nothing but they allow you to create children HTML elements without needing a parent HTML element. What do I mean by that? So let's do this. So if I remove the fragment syntax, we are seeing an error. JSX expression must have one parent element. What does that mean? So this is a JSX expression. This div, if you see, is a parent. This div and this div and this HR. Let me point it clearly so you guys see one, the two, and this third element are siblings of each other. They lie on the same layer on the DOM hierarchy. And what JSX error is telling us is all these three should belong to a single parent. Right now, there is no parent element. So traditionally in React, what we would do is in this kind of scenarios, uh, we will add a parent element, which is like a div element or something, which would just serve no purpose besides hosting these three elements as a parent. Let me reformat the code so you guys can see now this div, the horizontal line as well as the first div are inside a div element. Now this element, the div element that is on the line 28 and ends on line 42 serves no purpose besides just being a parent of these three elements. How can you verify that as well? So if you inspect element on this, and if you see we have a div element, which is the parent, then we have another div element, then a horizontal line, then another div element which shows the fruits list. Now this is very inefficient because if you had hundreds of components in your React code, you continue to add such div elements, and this make the application actually bloat and perform bad. So I believe in React 16 or 17, I have to exactly check. The React team came up with a concept called React Fragments. So it's known as React.fragment. And before I save this, I want to show you guys again. This div element, horizontal element, and the div element has another additional div element, which is serving as a parent. This React fragment allows us to remove that necessity, Uh, did I make a mistake? Yes, so we have to import the React when you use the fragment like that. So now if I look at my three elements, which are sibling of each other, this div, this horizontal line and div, they do not have any additional div element, which is that parent. And this way, our DOM tree becomes hierarchical in the manner we want to represent it, as well as um, we are not adding additional HTML elements in our tree. This is called a DOM tree. What you see is a tree-like structure, and this makes application very performant. So there are two ways you can create a React fragment. One is by doing this, or you can use a shorthand property by just removing this and having empty empty notations. and then you don't need this import as well. So in simplest terms, you can do it like this, and this behaves exactly as the previous scenario. And we are still seeing all these three elements, which are still not having any additional element, which is their parent. So any confusions there? Any confusions on React fragments? Anyone? Am I haven't heard anybody's voice today. Am I audible? I see John is just showing the hand, but I hope I'm audible to you guys and you guys are able to follow me. Maybe Daria or Elena, you guys are following? You guys have any questions? Stop me. Otherwise, the next topic is uh, more deep and uh, more what do you call more aligned to the real world React application building. But it's little complex. So if you guys do not stop me and if I keep going on, then it will not serve the purpose. So feel free to stop me if you guys get confused. Okay. So the next concept that we want to sort of learn today is side effects. Something called side effects. So what are side effects? So if you look at our application, displaying of this list or putting some search term like Apple, uh, that are synchronous applications that need to happen as user is acting with the application. But side effects are something that help our application run, but they directly do not contribute to a user action. Uh, Very wordy, I understand. Let's look at that by an example. So as our textbook, actually, this is an example from our textbook. So hopefully, you guys will be able to follow through again um, after the class. Otherwise, you can reach out to me if you don't understand the textbook example. But right now, if I say apple, so I see a double p, it filters fine. I see apple and pineapple. But if I refresh my application, there is no memory of what I searched before. Um, the search term becomes empty, and I see apple and the entire list back again. Now, how can we improve this? To improve this, right, we can use something called side effects, which are run through a React hook. So React hook is a concept in React which we have seen in past as well, where we are hooking into something of React. Use state is a hook which hooks a state value to a variable. In this case, an empty string to search term, and at the same time, um, it allows setting the value of the state variable as well. Similarly, for side effects, we have something called use effect. We have seen this in our game that we had built for rock paper scissors. So it might sound familiar to some of you if you had followed through that code, but this is a great segue to sort of dive deeper into use effect and see the purpose of side effect, how use effect can be used to do the side effects calling. So let's save our whenever user types something here, which is like a double p, let's save it somewhere right now. Because we are not saving this characters app, we are unable to retrieve and see it back when we refresh our app. So whenever user enters something in search term, let's save it somewhere. And in the easiest place to save it is your so your browser provides few kinds of storage. you might have heard about cookies. Then you might have then there's something called session storage, um, and then something called local storage. So session storage and local cookies are different, but local session storage and local storage kind of act very similarly. But once you close this browser session, which is if I hit this X button, anything that is saved on session storage goes away. Versus local storage is something that will stay as long as you have um, your browser there, and you have manually not cleared your history and all the details from your browser. So let's use the local storage to save the search term that user is user is entering. So we can do that by something called. So now here is the concept of side effect. Saving of the search term, which is in our case app on a local storage, has nothing to do with user interaction. It is something that can happen on its own without user really knowing about it, because that is something we want to use when user refreshes the application, and not necessarily user need to do anything about it. So this is like a side activity, a side effect that you need to perform in React, and for that we use a use effect hook. So use effect hook has this um, syntax where you provide the word use effect and import it from React package, uh, and and then you create a function. This is nothing but an arrow function that we are creating, and you provide another argument to use effect hook, which is the dependency tree. So dependency tree is what tells React to run this code under use effect whenever something is changed in dependency. So again, very wordy, I know. Uh, what does that mean? So I am telling React to do something whenever the search term variable is updating. So let's for now just log it. So let me remove the previous log. So I'm telling React to do this logging on console whenever we have a search term variable which is updated. And how do we update our search term variable? It's an on change handler of our input box that we had. So let's go back to our code and open the console here and refresh our application. And it's saying search term updated because empty value is also a value. So let's now enter app. So now we are logging the whatever user is entering on the search term. This means we are performing this hook or the code inside this hook from line 15 to line 17 is running every time the search term variable is getting updated and the search term variable is getting updated through user input. Instead of logging it, let's save it somewhere now, which we had decided to save on the local storage. So we say local storage dot set item. It's simple if you follow through, and then we have to provide a key for the value. So let's uh, tell it as user input. Let's call this key. This could be anything. The first parameter, it could be anything that you wish, and then the variable value. Let's remove the logs now and look at this, the effect of this. So let's refresh, and Again, I'm showing you guys how to debug, not just code the application, but debug the application as well. So follow through uh, the tabs that I'm opening on the debug panel. So we were looking at console till now. Now we have to look at the application, something called application, and there you will see different kind of storages that our current website is having. And if we click on local storage and then click on our website, then we see there is a variable called user input created, and as soon as I updated something here, it's updating here as well. That means we are actually saving the value of user input in a local storage variable called user input. Now, what is the beauty of this is when I refresh it, uh, because it ran again, uh, let me stop it from, let me highlight so how you guys can, okay, let's do this. So let's remove this. Uh, this is going to run anyways. So if I do this user input and search term is Apple, if I refresh, no matter how many times I refresh now, this value will be there and it's not dependent upon. So it's like you have permanently saved this value for you to use uh, in the future iterations. So now that the value is saved, instead of doing the empty string here, all we have to do is we have to tell React um, to read it from the local storage. So we can say local storage dot get item, and again we have to use the same key that we provided. This key, whatever name you provided to this key, it has to exactly match here. Or we, when you first time log in, this will be empty.
So user
So
input is a key.
user input is a key. This could be anything, my custom name.
So it's like
This
a
could,
key object then?
it's a key object. You got absolutely right. Local storage is nothing but a key object. If you see it, it actually tells us key and value. So the the structure of the local storage you could imagine being is something like this. A constant local storage equal to some key. So in this our case, user input. This is a very good question, and yes, you are absolutely right. And some value. So in our case, Apple. This could have been anything else as well. Maybe let's say username. Could have been anything. So local storage is nothing but a key value pair storage, and you just need to read it and read the key that you want to read and save on the key that you want to save. So what happens when you first time log in is let me let me show you guys so that instead of doing this code, let me do this. Let me delete this. You can always delete as well. Once you come here, you can right click and delete on the debugger. And let me do this. So our application has failed to load and we are getting this error. Cannot read property null of lowercase of null. And where it's coming, you have to click on the file and it points you to the, so again I'm showing you a debugging step when you run into an error. Let me do this again because this is again a very important concept as to how you will debug your application. Now I made a change on my application, but something happened and now my application is not running and I see an error. It's saying uncaught type error, cannot read property of null, reading lowercase. And then it's pointing you to app.jsx and the line number. It's telling me that it's having an issue trying to run this code. And if we examine this code, it's saying that it's trying to do lowercase on search term, but search term is a null. And why it's null? Because we are trying to read a local storage item, which is user input. If we go here, there is no item called user input right now. So we have to tell our application, if this is null, then use empty string. Only if this is null, use empty string. So for me to come to a conclusion to add this bit of a code, I need to understand the error that's coming here and then act on top of it. So let's save this, and now refresh our application. The error is gone and now we are able to see. Now the beauty of the change that we did with the use effect, every time user types something in the search box, we are saving. So app is now getting saved, and next time if I come here and refresh my application, I'm still getting display of app rather than the entire list. And how that is happening? Because now we are reading the search term value from the local storage, and the local storage is telling it's a app. That's how we are seeing the word app here. If we had called it as pineapple, and let's refresh this, now the pine word is there and we are seeing the pineapple. Now we are retrieving the value from local storage based on the key name user input and then filtering our values. So any confusions here? We good? So now this is how you run a side effect. Here, what we did was we implemented a side effect of updating the local storage, updating the local storage when user change their input. Now, there are several other kinds of side effects that you will run in the React world. And one of the most common type of side effect, which textbook example doesn't cover, but I want you guys to learn, is calling APIs and getting the data from a server rather than uh, rather than uh, actually reading it uh, directly from your um, React code. For example, fruits list. Fruit list could be a dynamic list that is not coded inside the server. Maybe it's a seasonal fruit list, and maybe apple are not always available, so we cannot hard code it in React. And in the most um, scenarios, we use server URL to actually uh, fetch the fruits from some sort of database or some sort of server, and that provides us the way for React to render the fruits list. So this is another important side effect that you would perform during React, and this is going to come often and often. So it is important for us to actually master the concept of calling APIs as well. So I have, for our purposes, I have created a server which is a database. So our database has fruit list, uh, and this fruit list is available to us through an API call. So you guys don't need to worry much about how I'm making APIs for now. But if I were to go inside my browser and go to my server, I get a list of fruits from server called Apple, the same list essentially. But instead of coding the list in the React, now we have to fetch it from the server. Are we clear on this? The What is the task here? Because this is something that you guys are going to do quite a few number of times if once you start working professionally on React code. So it's very critical that you guys understand how the side effect of calling an API can be handled in the React. There are much advanced ways to do this now using Redux and Redux Toolkit, but we are not going to go there. But the core concept of fetching the data from a database and server is through using a use effect uh, for doing those kind of side effect activities. So for now, let's remove the mm, fruits variable because we want to fetch it from server. And let's introduce a state variable called fruits, constant fruit, uh, and set fruits, and then we use state. And for now, we will have an empty array. So if we go back to our application, we have an empty fruits list for now, and nothing is to be displayed because we have removed our fruits array, which was hard coded in the React code, and we are going to call server API to do the fetching of the fruits from a server using side effect, and we are going to perform this side effect using use effect. The code for that is a little bit lengthy, so I have prepped up the code. Let me bring it here. So let me bring the code here, and um, will once I bring the code there, I will explain the code. So let me copy paste this code here and then explain what is happening. So few important things are happening here. So let me even comment this code out first and foremost here, and look at this syntax of the use effect hook. Let me actually clearly mark this syntax here because this is important syntax that is going to come across in interviews as well as when you start building the real world React applications. This is a syntax, line 18, 19, where a dependency array is empty, and dependency array being empty is indicating to React that run this effect only when the component first time loads. What is the difference? So let me show you by uh, actually let's have a counter. So we have a counter, right? This counter is, let's set as a 0, uh, console log counter, and every time this uh, uh, if this use effect hook happens, let's log our counter value is, and then let's say counter, and console.log em empty depths. Let's look at the behavior of both this block of code, and we have to actually update the counter every time we run this hook. Set counter plus 1. So let's go back to our code, and so we are getting empty dependencies as well as counter is 1. So every time I type something, the counter hook is getting triggered, but this empty dependencies ran only when the component first loaded. Uh, when the component loaded, only then we had ran it, and after that we are actually not running it again. Whereas this block of code will update every time the search term variable is, yeah, getting updated. So this is a critical logic in React side effects that is useful in quite a few times, where you have to call a special code only when the component first time loads. And in our case, it makes sense to fetch the fruits only once when they are uh, when our application loads, because fruits are not going to change, and that we are just going to filter on the fruits. So let me now explain this piece of code. So we are using fetch to call our API. So like how I showed in the browser, where I'm calling this API that I have built to get this list, very similarly, I'm calling the same thing. Instead of browser, I'm calling it in my React. And then this response that I'm receiving, it has HTTP code. And if it's not okay, then we are going to say something bad happened and we are going to throw an error. Otherwise, we are going to console log the data from API on our console. And if we run into any unknown errors, then this catch block helps us catching that error. So this is a try catch kind of mechanism, but you guys should read up on how fetch works, because this is very critical, not directly covered in the textbook currently, but this is very critical how fetch works. So there are other mechanisms to call APIs on React in React. Uh, Definitely read up on that, because this is going to come a lot once you start building the real world applications. Uh, but let's So we are actually calling this API and then console loading the data from the API on our console. So you see, we are getting the data, which is apple, banana now, in form of array. But with the name, it's not a pure array now, it's array of objects. Previously, we had array of string. So let's set our fruits based on that. So we will do set fruits, and then take the data, and can anybody tell what uh, collection function I should be using to convert this array of objects to array of string? So my ask is convert from array of objects, which is currently to array of strings. Can anybody explain or tell me how to do this? We have done this few times. We have used this function few times in our React classes. Can anybody think of it? How to transform from one data
Uh,
type to another type?
I think it's JSON.stringify.
Uh,
You
Not
want to
quite.
change it to a, you want to change it from an object to a string?
Array of object to array of string.
Would it be JSON.parse?
So we do not need to parse the JSON, because this statement is doing it for us, line 26. But it's a good try, though. It's a really good try. The answer that I am looking for is map function. So think of JavaScript collections map function. Think of those map functions, map as a function when you want to convert from a data type A to data type B. So we have this as an array of objects right now, and we need to make uh, array of what I call strings, because our remember our fruits was something like this, was something like this, you know. Uh, Apple, we had something like this in our code, you know. So we want our fruits to be like this, but currently it is like this. So this is array of objects and this is array of strings. So we have to do data dot map, then individual fruit as an object. So in our case, for example, the first fruit, which is apple, as an input, and then we have to return fruit dot name. So this converts this whole operation. Let me break it down for you guys. This operation is converting from array of fruit objects to array of fruit name strings. So this operation is converting from array of fruit objects to array of fruit name strings. And I suggest you guys practice the map function because this is going to come a lot when you work with the with actual code bases. Map filters dot for each. There are quite a few collection methods, and it's just I cannot emphasize more that this is going to come so handy when you're actually building the real world applications. So now if I save the code, it's saying assignment to constant variable. Okay, this is not necessary. So let me refresh few things that happen here and let me show it again. Now our list of fruits is populated. There's nowhere in the React code we have a list of fruits, but it is actually saved. The list is saved on database, and whenever you update the database, the no need to update your React code. So let's say this was maybe remind which fruit is missing here. Watermelon, kiwi, banana. Do we have mango? We have mango. Maybe some new fruit that we don't know. So this is think of this operation as somebody who you are not a UI developer or React developer. Um, Somebody updated your database. Think of that as this as that operation. Then let me restart our database. And now I have not made any change in my React code. It is running the way it was running previously as well. And some new fruit shows up. This is the beauty of asynchronous operations, side effect, loading the data directly from database. And now you have the new entries directly populating. And this is how actually most of the websites work as well. You think of it as, let's say you're looking at your TikTok or Instagram feed, any new messages that you see, they appear even before you update your Instagram or TikTok, right? That happens because the API is able to get the new details from database for you. So our API, which is running on port 8001, is able to get the data from the database. And now we are able to display it on the our React application directly. So this is an overview on React side effects, as well as we have seen two examples. One React use effect hook with a dependency, as well as one React hook without any dependencies, and how we can perform such side operations or side effects like fetching data from database using the React use effect. So In the textbook, you will still see some um, advanced concepts that if you want to try, I advise you to try, which is like creating a hook like use effect on yourself. Uh, Maybe you can take, if you take this code example, we have to right now do is we have to convert our search term to lowercase. You could create a custom hook which handles to lowercase operation itself. So think of example scenarios where you can create your hook and try to practice that. But that is an advanced concept, and I would only advise you to touch it if you are absolutely clear about the how we use the search term in use effect hook, as well as how we did a database fetching of the code of the fruits from database and displayed on the UI, and how we are leveraging local storage to save the user input and filter the list even when user refreshes their browser window. So this is uh, I understand this is a bit uh, lengthy concept to get through in 1 hour session. So we still have about 10 minutes left, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have, and we can go over the code and explanation again. But I want you guys to understand this quite clearly and quite deeply, because it's going to